Today we have the book Lay Vertigo, Six of Crows, Part 1, Shadow Business, Chapter 1, Juice. Juice had two problems, the moon and his mustache. He was supposed to be making his rounds at the Hody house, but for the last 15 minutes he's been hovering around the southeast wall of the gardens, trying to think of something clever and romantic to say to Anya. If only Anya's eyes were blue like the sea, or green like an emerald. Instead, her eyes were brown. Lovely, dreamy, melted chocolate brown, rabbit fur brown. Just tell her she's got skin like the moonlight, his friend Pierre had said. Girls love that. A perfect solution, but the Ketterdam weather was not cooperating. There's been no breeze off the harbor that day, and a gray milk fog has wreathed the city's canals and crooked alleys in damp. Even here among the mansion of the Gelstraat, the air hung thick with the smell of fish and bilge water, and smoke from the refineries on the city's outer islands had smeared the night sky in a briny haze. The full moon looked less like a jewel than a yellowy blister in need of lancing. Maybe he could compliment Anya's laugh, except he's never heard her laugh. He wasn't very good with jokes. Juice glanced at his reflection in one of the glass panels set into the double doors that led from the house to the side garden. His mother was right, even in his new uniform. He still looked like a baby. Gently, he brushed his finger along his upper lip. If only his mustache would come in. It definitely felt thicker than yesterday. He's been a guard in the Stad Watch less than 6 weeks, and it wasn't nearly as exciting as he'd hoped. He thought he'd be running down thieves in the barrel or patrolling the harbors getting first look at cargo coming in on the docks. But ever since the assassination of the ambassador at the town hall, the merchant council has been grumbling about security. So where was he? Stuck walking in circles at some lucky merchant's house. Not just any merchant, though. Councilman Hody was about as high placed in Ketterdam government as a man could be. The kind of man who could make a career. Juice adjusted the set of his coat and rifle, then patted the weighted baton at his hip. Maybe Hody would take a liking to him. Sharp-eyed and quick with the cudgel. Hody would say, "That fellow deserves a promotion." "Sergeant Juice Van Poel," he whispered, savoring the sound of the words. "Captain Juice Van Poel." "Stop gawking at yourself," Juice whirled, cheeks going hot as Hank and Rutger strode into the side garden. They were both older, bigger, and broader of shoulder than Juice, and they were house guards, private servants of Councilman Hody. That meant they wore his pale green livery, carried fancy rifles from Novyi Zem, and never let Juice forget he was a lowly grunt from the city watch. "Petting that bit of fuss isn't going to make it grow any faster," Rutger said with a loud laugh. Juice tried to summon some dignity. "I need to finish my rounds." Rutger elbowed Hank. "That means he's going to stick his head in the Grisha workshop to get a look at his girl." "Oh, Anya, won't you use your Grisha magic to make my mustache grow?" Hank mocked. Juice turned on his heel, cheeks burning, and strolled down the eastern side of the house. They'd been teasing him ever since he arrived. If it hadn't been for Anya, he probably would have pleaded with his captain for a reassignment. He and Anya only exchanged a few words on his rounds, but she always was the best part of his night, and he had to admit he liked the Hody's house too. And a few peeks he'd managed through the windows. Hody had one of the grandest mansions on the Gelstraat. floors set with gleaming squares of black and white stones, shining dark wood, walls lit by blown glass chandeliers that floated like jellyfish near the covered ceilings. Sometimes Juice liked to pretend that it was his house and that he was a rich merchant just out for a stroll through his fine garden. Before he rounded the corner, Jules took a deep breath. Anya, your eyes are brown like tree bark. He'd think of something. He was better off being spontaneous anyways. He was surprised to see the glass paneled doors to Grisha's workshop open. More than the hand-painted blue tiles in the kitchen or the mantles laden with potted tulips. This workshop was a testimony that Hody's wealth. Grisha indentures didn't come cheap, and Hody had 3 of them. But Yuri wasn't seated at the long work table, and Anya was nowhere to be seen. Only Redvenko was there, sprawled out on a chair in dark blue robes, eyes shut and book open on his chest. Juice hovered in the doorway, then cleared his throat. These doors should be shut and locked at night. House is like furnace. Redvenko drawled without opening his eyes, his Ravkan accent thick and rolling, telling Hody, I stopped sweating. I closed doors. Ravenko was a squalor older than other Grisha's indentures. His hair shot through with silver. There were rumors he'd fought for the law, losing side in Ravaka's Silver War, and had fled to Kerch after the fighting. I'd be happy to present your complaints to the councilman Hody, Jules lied. The house was always overheated, as if Hody were under obligation to burn coal, but Jules wasn't going to be the one to mention it. Until then, you bring news of Yuri? Ravenko interrupted, finally opening his heavily hooded eyes. Jules glanced uneasily at the bowls of red grapes and heaps of burgundy velvet on the work table. Yuri had been working on bleeding color from the fruit into curtains. For Mistress Hody, and he's fallen badly ill a few days ago, and just hasn't seen him ever since. Dust had begun to gather on the velvet, and the grapes were going bad. I haven't heard anything. Of course you hear nothing. Too busy strutting around in the stupid purple uniform. What was wrong with his uniform? And why did Ravenko even have to be here? He was Hody's personal squalor and often traveled with the merchant's most precious cargoes, guaranteeing favorable winds to bring the ship safely and quickly to the harbor. Why couldn't he be away at sea now? I think Yuri may be quarantined. So helpful, Ravenko said with a sneer. You can't stop craning neck like hopeful goose. He added, Anya is gone. Jules felt his face heat again. Where is she? He asked, trying to sound authoritative. She should be in after dark. 1 hour ago, Hody takes her. Same as night. He came for Yuri. What do you mean, he came for Yuri? Yuri fell ill. Hody comes for Yuri. Yuri comes back sick. 2 days later, Yuri vanishes for good. Now Anya for good? Maybe there was an emergency. Someone needed to be healed. First Yuri, now Anya. I will be next. And no one will ever notice except poor little Officer Juice now. Go now. If Council Hody, Redvenko raised an arm and just of air slammed Juice backwards. Juice scrambled to keep his footing, grabbing for the door frame. I said now. Ravenko etched a circle in the air, and door slammed shut. Jules let go just in time to avoid having his fingers smashed and toppled into the side garden. He got to his feet as quickly as he could, wiping muck from his uniform, shame squirming in his belly. One of the glass panes in the door had cracked from the force through it. He saw the squalor smirking. That's counting against your indenture, Jules said, pointing to the ruined pane. He hated how small and petty his voice sounded. Ravenko waved his hand and the door trembled at their hinges. Without meaning to, just took a step back. "Go make your rounds, little watchdog," Ravenko called. "That went well," snickered Rutger, leaning against the garden wall. "How long has he been standing there?" "Don't you have something better to do than following me around?" Just asked. "All guards to report to the boat house. Even you. Or are you too busy making friends?" "I was asking him to shut the door." Rutger shook his head. "You don't ask, you tell. They're servants, not honored guests." Jules fell into step beside him, inside, still churning with humiliation. The worst part was that Rutger was right. Ravenko has no business talking to him that way. What was Jules supposed to do? Even if he had had the courage to get into a fight with the squalor, it would be like brawling with an expensive vase. The Grisha weren't just servants, they were Hodi's treasured possessions. What had Ravenko meant about Yuri and Anya being taken away? Anyways, anyway, had he been covering for Anya? Grisha indentures were kept to the house for good reason. To walk the streets without protection was the risk to getting plucked by a slaver and never seen again. Maybe she's meeting someone, just speculated miserably. His thoughts were interrupted by the blaze of light and activity down by the boathouse that faced the canal. Across water he could see other fine merchant houses, tall and slender, and the tidy gables of their rooftops, making a dark silhouette against the night sky. Their gardens and boathouses lit by glowing lanterns. A few weeks before, Jules had been told that Hodi's boathouse would be undergoing improvements and to strike it from his rounds. But when he and Rutger entered, he saw no paint of scaffolding. The gondolas and oars had been pushed against the wall. The other house guards were there in their sea green livery, and Jules recognized two Stad Watch guards in purple. But most of the interior was taken up by a huge box, a kind of freestanding cell that looked like it was made from reinforced steel. It seemed thick with rivets and huge window embedded. In one of its walls the glass had a wavy bent, and through it Jules could see a girl seated at a table, clutching her red scale silks tight around her. Behind her a Stad Watch guard stood at attention. Anya just realized with a start. Her brown eyes were wide and frank, her skin pale. The little boy sitting across from her looked doubly terrified. His hair was sleek mussed, and his legs dangled from the chair, kicking nervously at the air. "Why all the guards?" asked Jules. There had to be more than 10 of them crowded into the boathouse. Councilman Hodi was there too, along with a merchant Jules didn't know, both of them dressed in merchant black. Jules stood up straighter when he saw they were talking to the captain of the Stad Watch. He'd hoped he'd gotten all the garden mud off his uniform. "What is this?" Rutger shrugged. "Who cares? It's a break in the routine." Jules looked back through the glass. Anya was staring out at him, her gaze unfocused. The day he arrived at Hodi's house, she healed a bruise on his cheek. It had been nothing. The yellow-green remnants of a crack. He'd been taken to face during a training exercise, but apparently Hodi had caught sight of it, and didn't like guards looking like thugs. Just has been sent to the Grisha's workshop, and Anya had sat him down in a bright square of late winter sunlight. Her cool fingers had passed over his skin, and through the itch had been terrible. Bare seconds later it was as if the bruise had never been. When Jules thanked her, Anya smiled, and Jules was lost. He knew his cause was hopeless, even if she had any interest in him. He could never afford to buy her indentures from Hody, and she would never marry unless Hody decreed it. And it hadn't stopped him from dropping by to say hello or bring her little gifts. She liked the map of Kerch best of Wimiskill drawing of their island nation, surrounded by mermaids smiling in the true sea and ships blown along by winds, depicted as fat-cheeked men. It was a cheap souvenir the kind tourist bought along East Dave, but it had seemed to please her. Now he risked raising a hand in greeting. Anya showed no reaction. "She can't see you, moron," laughed Rutger. "The glass is mirrored on the other side." Drew's cheeks pinked. How was I to know that? Open your eyes and pay attention for once. First Yuri, now Anya? Why do they need a Grisha healer? Is that boy injured? He looked fine to me. The captain and Hody seemed to reach some kind of agreement through the glass. Just saw Hody enter the cell, give the boy an encouragement pat. There must have been vents in the cell, because he heard Hody say, "Be a brave lad, and there's a few Kruge in it for you." Then he grabbed Anya's chin with the liver-spotted hand. She tensed and just gut tightened. Hody gave Anya's head a little shake. "Does as you're told, and this will be soon over, Ja." She gave a small, tight smile. "Of course, uncle." Hody whispered a few words to the guard behind Anya, then stepped out. The door shut with a loud clang, and he heard it slid a heavy lock into place. Hody on the other merchant, took position almost directly in front of the Juice and Rutger. The merchant Juice didn't know said, "You sure this is wise? This girl's a corporalnik. After what happened to your fabricator, if it was Venko, I'd be worried, but Anya has a sweet disposition. She's a healer, not prone to aggression. And you've lowered the dose?" "Yes, but we're agreed that if we had the same results as the fabricator, the council would compensate me. I can't be asked to bear that expense." When the merchant nodded, Hody signaled to the captain, "Proceed. The same results as the fabricator. Vervenko claimed Yuri had vanished." Was that what he meant? "Sergeant," said the captain, "are you ready?" The guard inside the cell replied, "Yes, sir." He drew a knife. Just swallowed hard. "First test," said the captain. The guard bent over and told the boy to roll up his sleeve. The boy obeyed and stuck out his arm, pumping the thumb of his other hand into his mouth. Too old for that, thought Juice. But the boy must be very scared. Juice had slept with the sock bear until he was nearly 14. In fact, his older brothers had mocked mercilessly. "This will sting just a bit," said the guard. The boy kept his thumb in his mouth and nodded, eyes round. "This really isn't necessary," said Anya. "Quiet, please," said Hody. The guard gave the boy a pat, then slashed a bright red cut across his forearm. The boy started crying immediately. Anya tried to rise from her chair, but the guard placed a stern hand on her shoulder. It's all right, Sergeant," said Hody. "Let her heal him." Anya leaned forward, taking the boy's hands gently. "Shh," she said softly. "Let me help." "Will it hurt?" The boy gulped. She smiled. "Not at all. Just a little itch. Try to hold still for me." Juice found himself leaning closer. He'd never actually seen Anya heal someone. Anya removed a handkerchief from her sleeve and wiped away the excess blood. Then her fingers brushed carefully over the boy's wound. Just watched in astonishment as the skin slowly seemed to reform and knit together. A few minutes later, the boy grinned and held out his arm. It looked a bit red, but was otherwise smooth and unmarked. Was that magic? Magic? Anya tapped him on the nose. Of a sort. The same magic your own body works when given time and a bit of bandage. The boy looked almost disappointed. Good, good, said Hody impatiently. Now the param just frowned. He never heard that word. The captain signaled to his sergeant. Second sequence. Put out your arm. The sergeant said to the boy once again. The boy shook his head. I don't like that part. Do it. The boy lower lip quivered. But he put out his arm. The guard cut him once more. Then he placed a small wax paper envelope on the table in front of Anya. Swallow the content of the packet. Hody instructed Anya. What is it? She asked, voice trembling. That isn't your concern. What is it? She repeated. It's going to kill you. It's not going to kill you. We're going to ask you to perform some simple tests to judge the drug effects. The surgeon is there to make sure. Do what you're told and no more. Understood? Her jaw set, but she nodded. No one will harm you, said Hody. But remember, if you hurt the sergeant, you have no way out that cell. The doors are locked from the outside. What is that stuff? Whispered Juice. Don't know, said Rutger. What do you know? He muttered. Enough to keep my trap shut. Juice scowled. With shaking hands, Anya lifted lifted the little wax envelope and opened the flap. Gone, said Hody. She tapped her head back and swallowed the powder. For a moment she sat waiting, lips pressed together. Is it just Gerda? She asked, hopefully. Juice found himself hoping, too. Gerda was nothing to fear. A stimulated everyone in the Stad Watch chewed to stay awake on late watches. What does it taste like? Hody asked. Like Gerda, but sweeter. It. Anya inhaled sharply. Her hand seized the table, her pupils dilating enough that her eyes looked nearly black. Oh, she said, sighing. It was nearly a purr. The guard tightened his grip on her shoulder. How do you feel? She stared at the mirror and smiled. Her tongue peeked through her white teeth, stained with rust. Just felt suddenly cold. Just as if it was a fabricator, murmured the merchant. Heal the boy, Hody commanded. She waved her arm through the air and gestured almost dismissive, and the cut on the boy's arm sealed instantly. The blood lifted briefly from his skin in droplets of red, then vanished. His skin looked perfectly smooth, all trace of blood of redness gone. The boy beamed. That was definitely magic. It feels like magic, Anya said with the same eerie smile. She didn't touch him, marveled the captain. Anya, said Hody, listen closely. We're going to tell the guard to perform the next test now. Hummed Anya. Sergeant, said Hody, cut off the boy's thumb. The boy howled and started to cry again. He shoved his arm beneath his legs to protect them. I should stop this, Juice thought. I should find a way to protect her, both of them. But what then? He was a nobody, new to the Stad Watch, new to his house. Besides, he discovered in a burst of shame, I want to keep my job. Anya merely smiled and tilted her head back so she was looking at the sergeant. Shoot the glass. What did she say? Asked the merchant. Sergeant, the captain barked out. Shoot the glass, Anya repeated. The sergeant's face went slack. He cocked his head to one side as if he was listening to a distant melody that unslung his rifle and aimed observation window. "Get down," someone yelled. Juice threw himself to the ground, covering his head as the rapid hammer of gunfire filled his ears and a bit of glass rained down on his hands and back. His thoughts were a panicked clamor. His mind tried to deny it, but he knew that he had just seen Anya had commanded the sergeant to shoot the glass. She made him do it. But that couldn't be. Grisha Korporalki specialized in the human body. They could stop your heart, slow your breathing, snap your bones. They couldn't get inside your head. For a moment there was silence. Then Juice was on his feet with everyone else, reaching for his rifle. Hody and the captain shouted at the same time, "Subdue her! Shoot her! Do you know how much money she's worth?" Hody retorted, "Someone restrain her. Do not shoot." Anya raised her hands, red sleeves spread wide. "Wait," she said. Juice's panic vanished. He knew he'd been frightened, but his fear was a distant thing. He was filled with the expectations. He wasn't sure what was coming or when, only that it would arrive and that it was essential. He'd be ready to meet it. Might be bad or good. He didn't really care. His heart was free of worry and desire. He longed for nothing, wanted for nothing. His mind silent, his breath steady. He only needed to wait. He saw Anya rise and pick up the little boy. He heard her crooning tenderly to him some Rabkan lullaby. "Open the door and come in, Hody," she said. Juice heard the words, understood them, forgot them. Hody walked to the door and slid the bolt free. He entered the steel cell. "Do as you're told, and this will soon be over, Ja," Anya murmured with a smile. Her eyes were black and bottomless pools. Her skin was a light glowing incandescent. A thought flickered through Juice's mind. Beautiful as the moon. Anya shifted the boy, weight in her arms. "Don't look," she murmured against his hair. "Now," she said to Hody, "pick up the knife."